Well, good afternoon and welcome back to Andersen Acres. We are again in the kitchen. Today we're going to make twisted rye bread. Now we have to make this by hand because we have to divide the dough in two with different ingredients in each half, and making it in a bread maker is going to be really annoying. So we are going to do this by hand. It's just a simpler process, easier for us to manage. So the first thing you want to do, you need two separate bowls and 1 cup of slightly warm milk. Now for slightly warm, I put it in the microwave for 30 seconds. That's it. You don't want it hot because if it's hot, the yeast will develop a little too quickly. You want a slower yeast developing, but if it's also fridge cold, then it's not going to develop very well at all. So 30 seconds in the microwave so you have slightly warm milk. You have 2 bowls. You're going to put half a cup of milk in each bowl. Ignore the dog barking. So we're just going to put some in, double check. That's not enough. You want it divided equally, so divide it slowly. Okay, that's half, and the other half in this one. Okay, then we're going to take traditional yeast because we're not using a bread maker and we don't need it to rise quickly. In fact, we don't want it to. This is 3/4 of a teaspoon. Put that in this bowl. Then we have more traditional yeast, another 3/4 of a teaspoon. Put that in this bowl. Okay, so you have half a cup of milk and 3/4 of a teaspoon of traditional yeast in each bowl. Then you're just going to take a spoon, give this a quick stir so that you can start to get some yeast action. Then move this to this one, do the same thing. Okay? Just gently. Now we're just going to let those sit for 5 full minutes until that yeast just starts to develop a little bit. It doesn't have to be fully developed, but we're just going to let it sit 5 minutes. So in 5 minutes, we'll come back and check them out. All right, so it has been about 5 minutes and both of our bowls are frothy. So we're going to set them both aside for a moment. We're going to get one in a minute. We're going to get a bowl with 1 cup of all-purpose flour, regular white flour. Okay, that's it. Half a cup of rye flour. So just half a cup. Give that a quick little mix with your fingers. I took off my ring. You'll notice I just did that because we're going to get our hands gooey. Okay? You want about a tablespoon of butter. You can do 2 tablespoons if you like, which is what I did because I like a little richer dough. And then you're going to need some molasses. Okay, just regular old molasses. And yes, molasses pours slowly. You're going to want about 2 tablespoons of molasses. My molasses is almost out, so it's going to take a minute to pour. And give it a squeeze. There we go. I'll get a fresh molasses for the next half. I just want to use up the last little bit that's in here. So you want about 2 tablespoons of molasses. Okay, you are going to get your hands gooey. Just know that because molasses and butter together makes quite the goo. Okay, there we go. We'll throw that one out because now it's empty. I'll get a new one in the next video. Now you want to take 1 of your bowls of milk and yeast and pour that in. You're going to want to scrape all that yeast out. You might as well use your fingers because it's going in here in a second. This is your bread dough. So we're going to smush up the butter, smush the molasses around. It's going to feel really sticky on your fingers because molasses is so incredibly sticky, but it makes a really nice rye for this purposes. I didn't put molasses in my previous rye recipes because I was doing other things with it. But in this case, you do want molasses. It'll help you have a rich dough because we're going to make the other half a cocoa half. So we need that richness. So we're just going to mix that up till we have mostly a dough that's cohesive. Then we'll pour it out. Okay, so we'll pour it out onto our mat and give it a knead. But right now we just want to kind of get it all coming together. So you're not really kneading right now. You're just incorporating the flour. We'll knead in a minute. And we don't need to knead very long because this actually develops really well. And we'll just scrape some of the flour out. There we go. So then we'll just turn the whole thing out onto, put that over there, out onto your mat. And that's okay if there's unincorporated because now we're actually going to be able to knead, and you want to knead until most of the dough is off your hands. So make sure you're incorporating this loose stuff. You really want to do that because that's what you need. You need that loose stuff to get the dough to firm up. So just be pushing and turning. Just do some pushing and turning while we're doing this. Okay? And it doesn't take long. You want to knead it, but it doesn't need a ton of kneading, and it should be slightly sticky. Remember, it has molasses in it, so it is going to be sticky, and you're not going to get all of the dough off your hands, just most of it. But if it's not slightly sticky, it's not quite moist enough. So you might have to add a little bit more milk. You can, of course, just also add a little bit more molasses. I added a little extra butter because I happen to like that. Moved my mat on you, sorry. But so we just knead it a few times. It's okay if all the dough doesn't come off your hands. That's normal. Molasses is sticky as all heck. Notice it's even sticking to my silicone mat. That is okay, right? That is okay. So we're only kneading this for about 2 or 3 minutes. You don't have to go 10 minutes with this kind of dough because it's already developing. Pick that up. Okay, you can just roll your dough onto little loose pieces to pick them up. So it's already developing. It's already sticky. Like you notice it's sticking to my hands, which is what you want. Okay, so you just kind of round it out. We've kneaded it. It feels pretty good actually. So it kind of feels, it should feel like a slightly damp marshmallow actually. So if it feels like a marshmallow that you got wet on the outside, then it's actually really good. So we're just going to set this one aside, and I'm going to gather my ingredients for the next half, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes, and I'll show you how to mix the next half. All right, so we're set up to make our second half. I'm using the exact same bowl because it's still a rye dough, so it's not a big deal to have these same ingredients because all the same ingredients plus a few extra are going in here. That's why it's important to make the regular rye half first. This is going to be a cocoa rye. So again, 1 cup of just regular white flour, half a cup of rye. That's a really good ratio to have. Give that kind of a toss. But it's a really good ratio to have because it's not too heavy, but it still gives you a nice rye flavor. You want a heaping tablespoon of cocoa powder. Make sure it's heaping. 1 little tablespoon is not quite enough. You also want a teaspoon of anise. Anise seed. That's what this is. These are anise seeds. You can get those at just your grocery store. They're really quite common in your spices area. I know most people don't have them in their cupboard, but they're actually really easy to get. Okay, you're also going to want 1 to 2 tablespoons of butter. I always err on the more butter just because it gives me a smoother dough. You can, of course, use only 1 tablespoon per half for this dough. And yes, my fresh molasses bottle, 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons. And if you go a little over 2 tablespoons, that's fine too. Not a big deal. Okay, so that's our molasses. The last thing we want is our milk and yeast mixture, the second half that we reserved before. So we're just going to pour that right in there and scrape any yeast that's on the bottom right out. You want all of that yeast. So once again, we're going to mix this. This will be darker, so kind of give the butter a squish first because make sure your butter is softened. If it's hard, this is actually going to be really difficult to mix. So now we're just going to incorporate this. And we did clean our hands between doughs just because I don't like starting off one dough with a hand that's already gooey. You actually don't have to do that because all of the ingredients in the first dough are in the second dough. So this smells cocoa-y and you can see it looks darker, okay, because it has the cocoa in it. So you notice you get real goopy. That's okay. You just want to get a lot of this flour incorporated. Scrape it down off the edge with your thumb and just keep squishing, because that's basically what you're doing, until you've squished quite a bit, and then just turn it out onto there. Get any little bits that are still remaining. Put the bowl aside, and now we're just going to continue. Like, it's very loose right now, but you noticed before it gets very, very smooth once we've incorporated everything. So we're just going to keep squishing. Lots of squishing, lots of turning, and then once it's more cohesive, we can do a 2 or 3 minute knead. You can knead for 5 minutes if you want. It really doesn't need it. The gluten develops fairly quick with these doughs, and we did pre-dissolve our yeast for a few minutes before we started, which really helps get the whole process of rising started. So we don't really have to worry too much about kneading for a long time. We want to knead till everything's incorporated. You notice we still have our other dough just sitting to the side. We're going to put them side by side in a bowl because they're getting mixed together. They're not mixed together. They're going to get twisted together. That's why this is called twisted rye bread. Okay, so we are just going to put them side by side in the same bowl to rise just because we can. There's no point in not doing that. I'm going to use the same bowl I mixed them in because why wouldn't I do that? So we're just going to do some pushing and turning. This dough will be slightly less sticky because it does have a little cocoa powder in it. So I'm just scooping out pieces that have fallen and scraping some stuff off my hands because why not? You're not going to get your hand totally clean because when you're smashing around with butter and molasses, things do get quite sticky. So this hand that I started using is not going to come totally clean on this dough. It's just not. That's why once I get these two in the bowl, I'm going to go wash my hands because I'm not walking around all day with a hand that looks like that. In the meantime, I am just going to take a little bit more off manually with my hand there. There we go. And we're just going to do this till it feels good. Once you've been doing doughs for a while, you'll kind of be able to feel when your dough is ready, because if you over knead, you can end up with a tough dough that doesn't really want to rise a ton. And I can already feel that we're approaching the point where I should stop. Now, sometimes you're kneading and your temperature, your humidity is a little different and you have to knead longer. Sometimes you only have to knead for 2 minutes. It totally depends on your temperatures and your humidities in your house. So on that given day, because that changes as well. So you just want to pay attention to how the dough feels. Again, it should feel like a marshmallow that you got dampish, right? Maybe a marshmallow that's not quite fluffy because it hasn't risen yet. When the dough rises, it should feel like marshmallows. So this is actually feeling pretty good to me right now. I'm just going to take a little more off my hand where I can. And we're just going to set these in the bowl, side by side, but not actually together. We're just going to set these aside. One like that, one like that. So it's okay if they touch as they rise because, frankly, I'm going to twist them together in not a braid, but in a twist. So it's okay if they touch. They're going to touch later anyway. So we're just going to leave these to rise for about an hour, 15 minutes probably, till they've puffed up. They should feel like actual squishy marshmallows at that point. Now I'm going to stick them in my microwave. I'm not going to cover them. I'm just going to put them in my microwave because that's a really good environment for rising. You can cover them with a damp tea towel or cover them with some plastic wrap. Just make sure they're sitting somewhere warm, not hot. I mean, you don't want to set them somewhere that's 100 degrees, but you do want them somewhere warm and you do want to keep the humidity in because you don't want your doughs to dry out. Okay, this one's already going to be slightly drier because of the addition of cocoa powder. So you don't want them dry. So I like to stick them in my microwave. As long as you can put them somewhere that is sealed, you don't need to cover them. Like the microwave is pretty well sealed. But if you're not putting them in the microwave, cover with plastic wrap or a damp tea towel or something to help keep this moisture in. But we will come back and check on our doughs in about hour and 15 minutes. They should be properly risen by then. All right, so here we are with our two doughs. They're looking pretty good. You'll notice the chocolate one may feel a little tougher only because it has cocoa. That's okay. If you find it's a little bit dry, put water on your hands and work water into it slowly. Don't add a bunch of water at once because it'll just turn into a gloopy mess. So now what we're going to do is roll these into kind of long, skinny, not super skinny. We're going about 14 inches. Okay, and what we're going to do is we are going to want to slowly roll these. And when you roll them and you feel it start to stick a little to your hands, you want to put some water on your hands. You can either have a bowl of water sitting nearby or I have a sink behind me. So I just put water on my hands here. And then I just roll it like this, wet it down. I'm going to wet this one too since my hands are wet. But kind of just wet it down and press before you roll. Like I'm just going to press and then fold up. Okay, just to get these a little bit longer. You want them about 14 inches. Remember, you are working with only half your dough at a time. Okay, so because you're only working with half, you're going to end up with double thickness. So I might even go to 16 inches. Because if you take a look, if we were to take this right now, we can roll it a little bit easier now. If we were to take this right now and double it, that would be quite large. So we're going to just get skinnier than that. Okay. This one's going to be a little wet now because I was using quite a lot of water on my hands, and I'm okay with that because it'll rise a little bit nicer. So we're just going, if you feel air bubbles, push the air out. Rye does not do well. So every once in a while I'll feel an air bubble underneath. And so what I'll do is I just literally just grab that air bubble, pinch it, and then poke to make it nice and even again. Okay? So what you want to do, this is the chocolate one, so it'll be a little tougher because of the cocoa powder, which is fine. It's not that difficult to work with. In fact, it's not really difficult at all to work with. You just end up with some cocoa stuck to your hands. It's not a big deal. We wash our hands after. So I feel air bubble here. So I'm just going to work that air bubble out. Give it a pinch. Okay, so that's what you want to do. See if you can push any remaining, I've got a couple of them. Push any remaining air bubbles out. And then push that back down. I'm not going to fold it over again because I don't want to trap any more air in it. But I'm just thinking about how long I want it and how skinny I want my loaf. So obviously if you want a skinnier loaf, you make a longer rope because you're going to have 2 ropes. So I'm just deciding. I might go to 18 inches. Often I do 14 if I want a thicker loaf, but I think maybe I want a thinner one. Yeah, maybe about 18 inches is good. I'm just using the gauge at the top here to measure, and that's an 18-inch rope. So now we're going to take our other one. Okay. Again, search for air bubbles as you go, because you want to push air bubbles out. Okay. Just want to push those air bubbles out so that you don't end up with your air bubbles in your dough. Just want to make sure it's about the same length. You do want it the same length. Okay. Now you're not braiding. You're not braiding because you only have 2. You're twisting. So now if I have 2 lengths, this is a little easier to work out because it's not cocoa. So now you've got 2. Okay. So what you want to do, kind of push them together. You don't want to get crazy. Okay, you don't want to get squish, 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 squish because then it gets really difficult to make it look decent. So you're just going to pinch the ends together here. Okay, try not to mash the dough because you do want a clearly defined chocolate side and rye side, but you do want these joined. Okay, you don't want them coming undone. So if you need a little bit of water on your hands to try to make that join up nicely, then you should do that. I think that's pretty good. And then what we're going to do, hand here, don't press down because you don't want to squish it, but just start twisting. Okay, and you twist as much as you want. And I'm just going to rotate here as well. But you twist as much as you want. Okay, and you just kind of see what looks good. And then you do the same thing at this end. Merge them together, but you don't want to do a thing where they like get all mucked up. You want them to still stay separated. So you're just going to pinch them all the way along on the end. You don't have to pinch them all the way along here because that's silly, because they'll rise together. But so you just kind of do that, and you kind of, on the ends, you kind of give it just a little bit of weight so that it stays, right? Because you don't want it unwinding as it rises. There we go. So that looks pretty decent. You kind of want to make sure you're even when it comes to your twists. You don't want to be all tight twist over here and a loose twist over here and something like that. No, you don't want to do that. You want it to be even. So then you kind of plump your edges in so that you don't have sticky out tapered edges. And that's your loaf. We're going to put this on a cookie sheet. Do I have mine nearby? I do. I thought I maybe forgot it somewhere. But no, it's right here. It's just in the oven. So we're just going to take our cookie sheet. Yes, I've used the same cookie sheet in pretty much every video. Transfer the rye onto the cookie sheet. We're not going to do anything else. We're just going to set that aside for about an hour, hour and a half maybe. It depends. Just make sure your seams are pinched on the edges so your bread doesn't come undone. If you don't have a warm, damp place to put this, you want to make sure you cover it with a damp tea towel. Maybe even cover that with a plastic wrap or plastic bag or whatever. You want a lot of humidity trapped in here. You don't want this getting dry because this part of the dough is already a little bit drier. So you want to make sure you have a lot of moisture locked in. So I'm putting it in the microwave because that'll trap my moisture. But you can put it wherever you need to. Just make sure you can trap moisture and heat inside here because this, if it dries out, will not rise. So we're just going to stick it in the microwave and we'll come back in hour, hour and a half maybe. So our twisted rye bread has been rising for about an hour and a half. I had to do a little pinching here and there just to keep the twist together at the ends. That's normal because it will try and flip out on you. So you're just going to bake it now once it's looking risen. You're going to bake it for about half an hour, so 30 minutes or so at 375 degrees Fahrenheit. So we'll come back in half an hour when it's baked and ready. All right, so our twisted rye bread is all finished. It was in the oven for 30 minutes at 375 degrees Fahrenheit. It should cool at least 5 to 10 minutes before you slice into it. Because it's narrow and because it has these segments, it's probably completely finished cooking. But let it cool just a few minutes. Breads do better if you let it cool just a little before you cut them. This is a great dessert bread. It goes great with coffee. Whatever you like to do. This is the chocolate side. This is the rye side. Either way, it's delicious. So thanks for joining us today. We do hope you make twisted rye bread at home, and we will see you tomorrow.